Shall we bring you some more on our breaking exclusive today? More than 20,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year.
Well, the grim milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. And to break this down is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What can you tell us? Have we reached that mark, that milestone?
Yes, indeed we have. We had reached 19,820 odd yesterday when 526 people crossed the channel in 8 small boats, but we're on course to surpass that number today. Our producer down in Kent tells us at least 11 small boats are in the English Channel. A couple have made it to be picked up by Border Force and returned to the Migrant Processing Centre at Dover Harbour, others being picked up as we speak, and it looks like at least 650 will have crossed today. That will take the total beyond 20,000 to 20,000, almost 20,500 for the year so far. And don't forget, we are now in the busiest period of the year when, for the most part, it's flat calm conditions and hundreds arrive every single day, which is exactly what we've seen the last couple of days. Flat calm conditions, lots of people coming across. The government has actually been spared a little embarrassment in terms of it's been over a week of bad, unseasonably bad weather in the Channel, or we would have passed 20,000 more than a week ago. But now things have calmed down again. We're on course to rocket up, and I've been speaking to sources who say, without a doubt, we will easily surpass the 29,000 who crossed for the whole of last year.
Will this be the largest year of crossings on record, or can we not be certain of that yet?
I think that would take a lot of doing, because the record year was over 45,000 who crossed the year before last, and there were lots of days of flat calm conditions there that allowed many people to cross during that year. So we're going to be well north of 29,000, so well into 30,000 something. We might even top 40,000, but we just don't know. I mean, the weather can be unpredictable, but we know we're in that period of the summer when it tends to be fairly good weather conditions.
Absolutely, and you've said for months how it's the weather that's the key factor in determining the numbers. So Starmer's in Germany today, the Prime Minister. He has apparently agreed a joint action plan with Germany to tackle this issue. What might that include?
Well, greater cooperation between the UK and Europe. Clearly, as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, the first thing he did in office was to scrap the previous government's Rwanda deterrent scheme to put many asylum seekers over to Rwanda for processing. He wants to smash the gangs instead. And in Germany, at that news conference, he doubled down on that decision to scrap Rwanda. This is what he said.
I have long said before the election that I thought the Rwanda scheme was a gimmick, which is why we stood it down immediately. But nonetheless, it is very important that we take back control of our borders. I have long been convinced that the best way, the most effective way to do that is to take down the gangs that are running the vile trade of putting people in dangerous situations across Europe and across the Channel. And I said before the election that I would invest political capital in making sure we could work more effectively with our partners in taking down those gangs. And that's why I'm very pleased today that we've had a substantive discussion, agreed to a joint action plan, and that will, as you would expect, deal with issues like data sharing, intelligence sharing, what we can do on joint operations, because that is the way to take effective action in relation to the vile trade that sits beneath irregular migration across Europe, and in particular sits beneath the vile trade of putting people into small boats across the Channel.
There was the Prime Minister using a lot of words to say perhaps not very much. But he used that term there. irregular migration. It seems that this is the new watchword for the government. Have they thrown the word illegal migration out the window?
They've gone back to what the previous government did describe channel crossings as before they passed the illegal migration bill, which deemed anyone crossing by irregular means was actually entering the country illegally, and therefore they should not be entitled, except in very exceptional circumstances, to claim asylum, and they would be deemed an illegal immigrant. But clearly, this government has decided, whatever the law change says, that they're going to go back to just describing it in more placid terms as irregular migration rather than illegal.
So is it going to become inaccurate in the United Kingdom to describe channel migrants as illegal migrants?
Well, I don't think so, because there has been a change of law under the illegal migration bill.
Until they repeal or amend that?
Well, unless what this is indicating is perhaps an intention of the government to repeal that legislation, to return us to the situation the country found before the passage of that landmark bill.
They might do, or they might just decide to ignore it and, continue to refer to it as irregular migration. I'm sure that's probably, rather than go through the Commons again and Parliament again to put this legislation through, I don't think they necessarily need to do it, because they're not asking for any special powers. They're just choosing to ignore the powers that are there.
It's a hugely significant shift in language. If you go from calling someone an illegal migrant to an irregular migrant, well, that would suggest that you should be treating those migrants very differently from how you would if you deemed them illegal.
Well, look, it's not just the change in language. There is, without a doubt, a significant shift in policy in the way in which those who cross from France in these small boats will be dealt with. Before, as I say, under the previous government, you would not be eligible to claim asylum. Now you will be allowed to claim asylum. Not just that, the government is determined to reduce that backlog rapidly. And as we already know, because we've discussed this before, the vast majority of those crossing are from countries where we can never send the people back to because they're deemed unsafe. So they are simply going to be allowed to stay. It's either asylum by name or it's asylum in any other name, because it is leave to remain in the UK.
And Mark, as you've explained, as we speak, 11 boats are in the English Channel with our authorities sat there meekly, just watching them come across, waiting for them to cross that halfway point before we perhaps pick them up and take them to shore. It is such a visceral example of a lack of power, of a lack of authority, of an impotence of this country, and also points to the question I'm sure is on the lips of many of those watching and listening, which is, why on earth do the French not choose to pick up illegal migrants as soon as they get in the water? They have responsibility for half of that channel, and yet they say, not our problem, Gov, as soon as a boat touches that water.
Yes, well, you're right there. As soon as the boat is in the water, the French have taken a decision that then it is too dangerous in their eyes to intervene to push that boat back to shore. So they leave it. They offer to rescue the inhabitants of that boat and to take them on board and return them to France. But every time the migrants, of course, refuse that offer and want to continue on their journey, and only ever accept that offer if they are in serious difficulties, if the boat is floundering, people are in the water, etc. So what you get is the sight of these French vessels effectively escorting the small boats until they get to the halfway point, to that line that separates French waters from UK waters. Once they cross the line, then those migrants are only too happy to be picked up by the UK authorities, because that's their goal, to be taken into UK custody, to go into the asylum system. But the issue around whether anything will change is a long, long way off, because it's going to, although the current government is focused on smashing the gangs, to get the investigatory process beefed up to the extent of going after the criminal gangs, trying to dismantle the criminal gangs, if they can ever achieve that fully, is going to take an awful long time. They're only in the process now of recruiting more investigators. That's going to take time in itself. Then you've got to investigate. And these things are lengthy in duration. You know, they're multi-dimensional over multiple countries, involving serious organised criminals that know how to commit crime and get away with it.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, letting us know what you make of all of that. 20,000 in just 1 year so far.
What an example of the impotence of the British state, of sort of how we see the boats there in the middle of the channel, and we can't do anything. We don't touch them. We can't do anything. We can't stop the boats. In fact, we bring the boats to us. Could you imagine Britain doing this 100 years ago?
No, I can't. And